Oh yeah, absolutely. This is a test to make sure my mic is on. I'm getting the thumbs up from my tech guys in the back, in which case I'm going to start partying. Good evening, everybody, and welcome into our first hybrid Civic Awareness Series. I'm so excited that we're finally able to bring this program hybrid. So we obviously have our friends at home. We have some friends in person with us as well. And I hate to rub it in, folks at home, but the people in person got a pretty sweet deal this time. There was free pizza. You never know what you're going to find at the Schaumburg Library, just saying. Oof, sorry, my brain's a little frazzled from running out in the rain to grab the pizza. So if I forget to say something, I apologize. The one important thing I want to make sure I do is go over a few of our friendly reminders. For our in-person audience, I'm going to ask that you silence your cell phones. You will be using them as part of today's program, but if you can make sure those are on silent so you're not distracting the other patrons around you. For our virtual audience, I'm sure you're familiar with this by this point. If you're having any technical issues, you can reach out to us through the Q&A box. That way we'll be able to go back and forth with you and fix whatever your issue may be. You can also use that Q&A box to ask any questions of our presenter that you might want. We'll take those questions at the end of today's program, but make sure you're dropping them in as you go so you don't forget them as we're going along, as well as closed captions are enabled for your convenience. And speaking of questions, for our in-person audience, if you have questions, at the end of the program, I'm going to need you to shoot your hand up high in the air because our beautiful virtual audience won't be able to hear you unless I come near you with this bad boy. I'll be running around at the end of the program taking both our online questions and, of course, our in-person questions as well. So just make sure you put your hand up nice and high. I'll come over to you, put the mic under your mouth. You can ask your question, and I'll vanish seamlessly into the background. Without further ado, I'd like to hand this evening over to one of our community partners here at the Schaumburg Library, the Palatine chapter of the League of Women Voters, and their co-president, Gail Banakis. I got a smile and a nod. That means I said it right for the first time ever. Everyone, please welcome Gail.
So those of you watching virtually, not only did you not get the pizza, which is spectacular, you didn't get to have this in-person energy level. So please, the next time we are doing civic engagement, you must come in to be able to experience this in person. The League is a nonpartisan group. We do not support, nor do we oppose candidates or political parties. If you are interested in learning more about the League of Women Voters, those of you here, please stop by at the table at the back of the room. We would love to talk to you about joining our organization and joining our mission to defend democracy. And for those of you who are listening to us online, please look at the link in the chat. The League promotes civic engagement by teaching people how to access the tools they need to make a difference. Hence, our League is delighted to work with the Schaumburg Library to bring you this interactive evening in exploring new ways to vote in these United States. A special thanks goes out to Janet Sonoyka and Terry Gazowski, who are our League event chairs for this evening and for their work in coordinating tonight. And a special thanks to our presenter and subject matter expert, Rebecca Williams. Rebecca Williams is the statewide organizer for FairVote Illinois and has been working in policy advocacy since 2017. She led the successful campaign for ranked choice voting in Evanston, Illinois, the first city to adopt RCV in our state. She has a passion for nonpartisan systemic change. And it is my pleasure to turn the evening over to her most capable hands.
Three seconds. Okay. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Gail. And I'm super excited to be here talking to everyone, both in person and online, about why voting needs an upgrade and how I think we can best do that. So the sad truth of America today is our country is wildly polarized, and our politics are broken. And people are feeling that way everywhere from their local levels, feeling as if their cities are not running all that well, up through the federal level. And if you are personally feeling this way, feeling this frustration, this graph illustrates that's really the view of the majority of the country right now. And as well, public trust in government is historically low. So I know that here at the League, we care a lot about civic engagement. We care a lot about people getting out to vote and everything, but it's harder and harder to do that when people feel as if they just don't have good choices, or as if their vote isn't going to matter, that nothing is going to change. And speaking of nothing changing, a statistic that we often see with Congress is they're often at about 20% or so approval rating, but over 90% of incumbents keep their seats. So something isn't matching up there. So we are clearly a divided nation, and as a great Illinoisan once said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So what's important to understand before I really dive into this reform of ranked choice voting is that the way we vote really tends to drive division, and it drives down choice as well. And that is plurality voting. And this is how almost all of our elections in Illinois are done. So plurality voting means that for a candidate to win, they simply need to get the most votes. They don't necessarily need to get that majority of 50% plus one. Of course, if there's only two people in a race, we don't have much choice there. Someone's going to get that majority. But if there are three or more people in the race, this is where we can risk having a winner that won with less than 50%. And so as voters, we have to start making some calculations in our head when we're thinking about who we want to vote for, such as, does my candidate even have a chance of winning? Am I going to be wasting my vote if I vote for this certain candidate who I really resonate with, but see they aren't polling too hot? And on the candidate end, they can think to themselves, if they're in a race of three or more, what's the least number of voters I need to win? There have been really awful shenanigans in politics where the party, a certain party will throw a candidate into a race just to try to pull votes against their opponent. They'll fund a candidate that's more ideologically similar to their opponent, things like that. And then the candidate will also really focus on, who is my villain? I think we've seen this a lot in our politics. It's less about talking about why they are really fit for the job, what they're going to do for our community, and why we vote for them, and more about, if you vote for this other person, they're going to be the worst ever. So it really drives these super negative campaign cycles that we see. And in every election, particularly presidential, because this is where we usually see these parties, we see the same kind of conversations. If you are of the more conservative persuasion, you might say to your friends, I really don't like the Republican this time. I think I'm going to vote Libertarian. And they say, no, don't do that. The evil Democrat is going to win. If you are on more of the liberal side, you might really like the Green Party candidate. I'm not crazy about the Democrat this time. And they say, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? You're going to make it so the horrible Republican wins. So it really leaves us with just these constant binary choices where people aren't happy and fully free to express themselves. And for the candidates, they are just slinging the other is. And I want to illustrate some of lots of times that candidates can win with less than 50% of a few examples of that. So this is really, really prevalent in primaries. We often get more choices. And again, that should be a good thing. It's a really nice thing to be able to have several candidates, but we end up with results like this. In this race in particular, Robin Gable was victorious with 20% of the vote. She, of course, went on to win the general, and she's had her seat ever since. And with these examples, I'm not saying anything negative about these. One, just that we have no idea if they were truly the most popular in the community. One on the Republican side is, again, you see 5 candidates running. That's great, except the one who won only got 33% of the vote. We really have no idea if, say, John Howard was more popular with the rest of the community. You can't tell with this system. And so those were some partisan primary examples, but also have elections. Most of our municipal elections are nonpartisan, right? And those can have the same issue. So in Chicago, this is an example of 2019. I could have updated it with a 2013 slide, but because that had 9 candidates, but this particular race had 14 candidates. And in Chicago, they actually do require a majority to win, but you have to go to a runoff in order to. So voters have to go out all over again, using more taxpayer money and fueling a month-long negative campaign cycle before the runoff election. But what you also had with this one was 2 candidates who received less than 35% of the vote, the 2 of them. So we really, if they had just done ranked choice voting in that election, it could have all been done in one, and we could have figured out who was truly most popular, but this election didn't quite allow for that. So I don't think this is the best we can do with democracy. I think that we must do better if we want more people to actually engage in it, and if we want to get good from our politicians. And I think the best way to move forward is ranked choice voting. So I want to just give a brief history on ranked choice voting in the United States, at least as of the 21st century. As of 2000, there were just 2 places that were using it. It was Cambridge, Massachusetts. Can't remember the other city. Cambridge has been using it since like 1940. But yeah, very little use as of 2000. But then that was around the time that the grassroots movement started to get going. And by 2012, we can see that a lot more cities had adopted ranked choice voting use. And some southern states where you see the purple there, what they were doing is they started adopting it for military and overseas voters, because runoffs are very prevalent in the southern states. And so they realize, we can just make it so military and overseas voters already put their second choice. They just don't give that convenience to their voters in the state. So by 2023, we can see that ranked choice voting has become a very fast-growing reform. These dark purple states, Maine and Alaska, they are using it statewide. So in this upcoming presidential election, they're going to get to use ranked choice voting. If people in those states want to vote third party and then put their second choice, they can do that. They can do it for all of their statewide offices. And then you can see a lot more municipalities have adopted ranked choice voting as well. So it's a very fast-growing reform. So into all the benefits of it and how it, deals with some of the ills of our current system. But first, I just want to explain how it works. So ranked choice voting considers your first choice, but if your first choice cannot win, it will consider your second or your third or your fourth, just depending on how many you have to go to get a majority winner. So we've got 5 characters here. Let's say they're running for mayor of Toontown. Now, with this spread of the first, we see kind of, a common result where no one reaches that majority threshold of 50%. Front runners in a normal election, Daffy Duck would just win 38%, but this is a ranked voting election, so we're going to go to an instant runoff round. So what happens there is we eliminate the candidate in last place, Wile E. Coyote. Didn't have a lot of supporters, but now his votes, you see the little brown bars, that kind of denotes his votes that have been distributed among the other choices. Those were the second choices of the Wile E. Coyote voters. But we still don't have a majority. Daffy Duck is still at only 39%, so we've got to go to another round. Here, Sylvester was eliminated. You can see his pink. That was the second or maybe even third choice votes. If someone had put Wile E. Coyote as their second, it would just go to their third automatically. And we say, okay, do we have a majority yet? No, but Bugs Bunny has pulled ahead slightly. So we're gonna see who's gonna win. Roadrunner is the next one to be eliminated though. And in the end, we see that Bugs Bunny actually is our winner with 54% of the votes, is 46. And I do want to say, this kind of result we see here, we see it in summary voting elections, but it is uncommon. Most of the time, the person who secured the most votes will win the whole thing. They did a good job of appealing to the majority of the community, but sometimes you see that they did not. Sometimes you see, maybe Bugs Bunny was more ideologically aligned with these other candidates, or he just did a better job campaigning, and that's why he ultimately got more votes. So with ranked choice voting, what it really enables to vote through preference, because there's an voting that enables more choice for people. So you can have multiple candidates running in a race, even if they're pretty similar. So leaving more than two viable options in places that are using runoffs right now, such as Chicago, such as lots of southern states and everything, you no longer need to have those. Also, there are some places like Evanston that they would, depending on the amount of candidates running, would sometimes do a primary. It was actually a super confusing system in Evanston. We realized how confusing it was once we started going after, dug into it, and that was something that we talked about, is you aren't going to have primary sometimes anymore. And they were like, oh, good. Thank goodness. Yeah. Because voters don't like it to be confusing. They like it to be simple, just go out and vote the once. And then it does not run super negative campaigns anymore with ranked choice voting, because it's no longer a zero-sum game. No longer that candidate else, they can rank you. And if you are being super negative about all the other candidates, if someone likes them, they're probably not going to rank you at all. And speaking to some actual data to back that up, so in New York City, and the first time that they ranked choice voting, a lot of voters were polled about how they found the tone of the election to be. And of course, a lot of people said, oh, it was about the same. For people who felt it was different, they overwhelmingly thought it was more positive. You can see that in the green there. And a quote from the former Minneapolis mayor, where they used ranked choice voting for over a decade now, little elbowing and attacking, because every candidate wanted to be the second choice of their opponent's supporters. And what we've even seen in some campaigns is that candidates that are very ideologically similar will even, do campaign ads or something together, because they're kind of just saying, we want one of us to win. And they want the voters to know that they're similar. Of course, they still want themselves to win, but you can do that with ranked choice voting. And so maybe this is sounding good to you, but you're thinking, Well, is this a system that voters will understand, right? Is it hurt our democracy, hurt or something if we switch to this new system? And fortunately, we see overwhelmingly understand ranked choice. They think that it is easy. So again, see in New York City, a place that is very diverse, lots of languages, all the different demographics you can think of. 95% of voters said it was easy, and huge percent of them utilize multiple rankings. And we see these kind of high numbers for understanding pretty much across the board with our city. So 86% San Francisco, 90% Minneapolis, and of course it just goes up over subsequent elections. And also an important thing to measure is that voters are happy with ranked choice voting. So of course they understand it, but do they want to keep using it? And that's what we've seen pretty much everywhere too. 79% said yes, they would like to continue using ranked choice voting moving forward. Over 60% said yes in Maine after starting to use it statewide. And even, I mean, there was a repeal effort in Minnetonka, Minnesota last year. It's 2024. I think it was in 2023. It was then or in 2020. It was in, it was 2023. There was a repeal effort in Minnetonka, Minnesota. It was funded by a pretty far right wing group that just didn't like ranked choice voting. And that repeal effort failed. It actually, the percentage of voters that voted for ranked choice voting when they initially got it, the percentage that voted against the repeal effort actually went up in that election. So they found that, it was even higher support for ranked choice voting than when they voted to implement it. We see that voters like it and they want to keep using it. Another of ranked choice voting is we see that it happens to help women and candidates of color a lot of the time. Ranked choice voting is not necessarily designed to do this, but I think that probably what we're seeing here is that it is a natural consequence of people being able to preference, and also of us having more choice of people can get in a race and not be a spoiler or not split the vote or anything like that. So you can see that the red bars represent before RCV and the blue bars are after ranked choice voting starts being used, substantial increases for both candidates of color and women of color. And to illustrate that as well with New York City, after they used ranked choice voting for the first time, they actually had a majority female city council. It was 31 of 51 seats. Prior to that, women had never held more than 18 seats on the city council. I don't know if it's still 31. I think it's over 26 now. But yeah, but it's still basically at parity with it, which is great. And of course, the other thing is if place does runoffs or primary elections for your city or something, you can save a lot of money. This is an example of the San Francisco Bay Area, where they've been able to save close to $5 million across 4 citywide elections by using ranked choice voting. But Chicago, we've been able to find it costs at least $3 million for the runoffs every time that they do them. It costs a lot more, but we haven't been able to find the numbers, at least $3 million. So in summary, ranked choice voting, we see that they lead to better representation. Campaigns become more positive, it's easy for the voters, and they're happier with the results. So, FairVote Illinois, we want to get ranked. This is something that has to be done state by state. all states have to do our that can come top down from the federal government. We're building the movement. So some ways that you can help today. If you want to just join our mailing list, I'll pass this around, and some of you may very well be on this already. And no pressure if you don't want to be on it, but if you're like, this is really cool, I want to get involved or maybe just see what's happening, then please get on our list. You can also, of course, volunteer. We always need more people helping out, and you can do that in all sorts of ways, canvassing, getting us presentations, things like that. Have us speak to your organization. If you are part of another group where you think, I think they would want a presentation, then. And you can also do the really simple thing of following us on social media. If you use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok even, we're on all of those at FairVote IL. And then, of course, campaigns cost money. Doing this work all throughout Illinois and just raising awareness costs money. So if you're ever inclined, you can donate at fairvoteillinois.org/donate. Sorry to those of you who are on Zoom, but yeah, if you just go to fairvoteillinois.org, you want to sign up there. So dive into a lot more information on the site too. Just also wanted to kind of wrap this up before we get to Q&A with our current focuses for FairVote Illinois. So a lot of people ask us about, oh, when are we going to get this statewide? And I so want to get it statewide. That's a huge goal of ours. I want us to be able to use it for presidential elections and everything. But we have no binding ballot initiative option. So that's how the states that currently have gotten it, but we are going to need to go through Springfield. We got to get the legislature to pass a bill for it. So kind of the main thing we're focused on right now is getting it for municipalities so that we can show that it works well, that people are happy with it, just like I was citing with the other cities and other states that are using it. And hopefully that'll eventually put pressure on our legislature to pass it statewide. But so some of those municipalities we're working on is they have to be home rule, and they can adopt ranked choice voting with a binding referendum. And right now we're circulating petitions in Oak Park, Skokie, and Naperville. And then we are also working on movement building and talking with the city councils in Bloomington, Normal, and Chicago. So, you know, we want to expand that list in the future, but that's kind of where we are right now. And then we also have a focus on Peoria for November because the Peoria Township is going to have an advisory referendum on their ballot, which basically allows the voters to weigh in on that statewide question. It's kind of asking them, would you like ranked choice voting statewide? So even though it's an advisory referendum, we think that's pretty important that that receives a yes. All right, so that is my presentation, and I think I have time for, Q&A, and I can't remember if someone was going to come up and talk before Q&A. I think, or you were going to go around. Yeah,
yes,
that's it.
Any questions?
Cool.
Are you going to do that?
Yeah, so we'll do it after Q&A. I do want to, I want to remind everyone now that I'm done with the presentation, if you haven't yet done it, please scan the QR code. Everyone should have either a small or a larger slip at their table that says scan me, and just quickly rank your favorite pizza toppings on your phone. You can, you don't have to rank all of them if you don't like all of them, but yeah, you can rank as many as you want, and then I'll reveal the results of that once we're done with the Q&A.
Perfect, wonderful. Well, first, Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and being with us this evening. If you are on my virtual audience, let me fix this because right now they can only see the screen and not the presenter who's going to be talking to them. There we go, much better. Please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A. If anyone in person has a question, just throw that hand high in the air. I'm going to come over to you with my microphone. Are there questions from anyone at all? One over here, 1 second.
Could you explain again how ranked choice voting diminishes or reduces the negativity? Yeah, because I believe you. I'm just trying to kind of get it in my head how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, okay, so it's, it's not guaranteed that it will make it so a candidate is more civil and everything. But what that will do is it will make it so the election probably doesn't go as well for them. And the reason for that is because right now our elections are zero-sum games. It's you vote for me or you vote for another candidate. And so if I'm running, whether I think the other candidates are okay or not, I'm really incentivized to paint them all out as bad and, say why I'm good and everything. And there's no real downside for me doing that. As long as people believe me that those other candidates are bad, then, that means they're going to vote for me. But with ranked choice voting, since people can put multiple rankings, put multiple choices, if I'm attacking my other 3 candidates that are in the race with me and voters are seeing that, they're going to be pretty turned off by me and those tactics. They're going to say, well, actually, I really like Mary. I think, and if it seemed like you and Mary were kind of aligned, but if you're going to be such a jerk, then I don't know that I want to vote for you, right? And so that is where it makes it so they are more incentivized to be civil because it can be a real turnoff to voters. Yeah.
Yes, I actually have a couple. So I noticed, for instance, on the pizza, you can rank all 4 if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
You were mentioning 1 and 2 in your example. So do you rank more than 2 candidates? Do you rank 3
Oh yeah,
or 4
you can
candidates?
absolutely rank all of them if
But
you
when
like.
do those come into play?
So when your other choices would come into play is if your first one can't win. So if your first choice is like the Wile E. Coyote, where he's the first one that gets eliminated, then that's when your vote will move to your second choice. And then if we have to go to another round and your second choice is eliminated, that's when it will go to your third. But that's the thing that I really like about ranked choice voting too, is ranking other candidates or ranking other, choices. It's never going to hurt your first choice, right? So you can feel free to rank as many as you want.
And then what happens if in a round more than one candidate gets 50% in that round? Is it still whoever got the most? Or is it that the 2 or 3 or whomever who got more than 50% then go through, like the others drop out and just those 2 then go through the next round?
So if a candidate gets more than 50% in the first round, then they just win, right? Like it's like a normal election, you don't have to do any of that. It would be mathematically impossible for any 2 candidates to get 50% plus 1. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not thinking.
Oh, no, you're fine, yeah. yeah. All good.
And then, I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if I caught, were you saying something about there would not be a primary, or you said something about primaries, and were you talking about the runoff issue, or?
Yeah, so where primaries would kind of become unnecessary from Illinois' perspective is for municipal elections. We would still want to have them. I don't see them going away for our statewide legislators, like the examples I gave there, or for presidential primaries, congressional seats, any of that. We'd still have them for those, but there are all the municipalities do their elections a little bit different, and some of them right now have primaries. It's no longer necessary with ranked choice voting.
Any other questions from anywhere in the room? Oh, hands just start shooting up.
I was wondering about in relation to like them talking about voter fraud, and would someone say, well, someone didn't rank properly, or there was a double ranking on, would you get anything like that? Because it have to be, I mean, to keep track of it, it has to be electronic voting, I would imagine.
Yeah, so there is some amount of mistakes made with ranked ballots, but what we found in most places is that it is similar to mistakes made with, regular voting, where sometimes, people will vote for two on a ballot and then you have to throw that out because, or they just don't vote for anyone. With ranked choice voting, it kind of depends on the nature of the mistake in terms of if it has to just be completely thrown out for that. Sometimes it's a mistake like you ranked two people for number one and then you ranked a person for your second choice. We just have to go to your second choice is what, might. But yeah, so it depends with that. What I will say too is that if you are doing electronic ballots, which is a lot of what is used, if you're voting in person, of course, then it does catch if you're making, like, it doesn't allow you to rank multiple people with the same ranking and everything. So that catches a lot of that. With mail-in ballots and everything, that's where we just need to do a really good job educating people.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Speaking of educating people, so right now, or as of April 2024, there's 5 states that have banned ranked choice voting. And the justification for getting that legislation passed is essentially it's too confusing for voters. When you're writing, helping craft these referendums and things like that, how do you educate the average voter to better understand, since you can't sit everybody down with the PowerPoint and pizza, or maybe you can, what is the approach in Illinois specifically that your group is focusing on?
Yeah, well, so what we did in Evanston was we had a couple years running up to it where we were really community, going to farmers markets, presenting to groups, just talking to as many people as we could about it. And that's why we got a good sense that it would be popular and it would pass well. And Mayor Biss was a strong supporter of it too. So that helped. But for our campaign, it was a lot of door knocking, a lot of phone banking, a lot of putting stuff out on social media, because that's huge now. And yeah, it passed with 82%. So I think that we did a good job. And I will say that there have unfortunately been several states that have banned it now. In all of these states that have had bans put into place, that has been done by lawmakers. That has not been done by the people. No voters are voting to ban ranked choice voting. Voters don't dislike ranked choice voting, right? Whereas on the other end, in almost all of the cities and the states that are currently using ranked choice voting, I say almost all because there have been a couple where the city council put it in place. But at least 90% of the places using it, the voters voted to use it. So I do think it's unfortunate that a lot of lawmakers are afraid to participate in ranked choice voting elections. But hopefully we'll eventually see that turn back as more and more places adopt it.
Yeah, you're getting to what I'm trying to get my head around to, is that what is it that makes the lawmakers afraid of this?
Yeah.
What is the energy and the force behind the negativity on this, so that, get it?
Yeah, so I think it can be a couple things. So the least charitable version of it is there may be some lawmakers where they understand they probably aren't going to win without plurality voting. Like, they have maybe won several elections where they didn't actually get to that majority. And so they might be worried that if ranked choice voting is used, they might not keep their seat. So that's kind of the worst version of it. I think on a broader level, it's just that they're kind of scared of something new. And because so there are some places where they're just outright banning it, and I think that's a gross misuse of power. But in all the other states, we haven't had a legislature yet that has put it into place. Again, it's been all voters getting this for themselves. So I think for all of those states, it's a thing of like, I don't know about this. I got voted in with our current system. I don't know that I really want to mess with that. So yeah.
And you listed the cities in Illinois that you're working with. And could you just explain again, what would it take for Chicago as an example to get that done? Who do you have to go to when it says non-binding and things like that? Who do you have to actually get to approve that, to have it in place in a large city like Chicago?
Yeah, so every place that we'll work in, we might approach it a little bit differently, but with Chicago, we definitely need to go through the city council there. So the work we're doing right now is we're currently, most of our focus is on starting to build up a coalition of groups that supports this. So it's not just FairVote Illinois that's going into Chicago and saying, we should get ranked choice voting. It's all sorts of different groups in the community that say, yes, we want this. So we're working on adding more groups to that. And with that, we're reaching out to groups, we're giving more presentations, utilizing our current network. Yeah. And then once we have that more built out, that's when we'll probably really start lobbying the city council. So getting their constituents to talk to them who are volunteers from other groups. And we know that we have a champion. We actually have multiple champions in the city council right now. So there are multiple alders who are big fans of it and will absolutely help us push it through, but we do need the majority. We need 26 to support it. And if that's the case, it'll be a binding referendum that they put on the ballot and then got to get voters to vote for it.
Question from someone on our online audience. They were asking about, could you speak to the future of, I was like, I'm going to remember it without looking, and then I didn't. Could you speak to the future of open primaries? How would this wrap into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So cool thing about ranked choice voting is it can kind of work well with any election structure that you want to use it with. So I was saying earlier, like if you have municipalities that have a primary, they can just get rid of that. If they really wanted to keep it, they could still use it with that, right? It's unnecessary, but so you can make it work with any structure. And a structural reform we're seeing to elections that's often used in tandem with ranked choice voting, because it's a really powerful reform bundle, is open primaries and ranked choice voting. So this is what they are using now in Alaska. So in Alaska, basically what happens there is, let's say it's for your congressional senator, right? Instead of the primary being a partisan primary, where you're voting for Republicans, you're voting for Democrats, all the candidates are on one ballot in the primary. And in Alaska, they have chosen that the final four will go to the general. So it's a way of making it so voters actually have more choice in the general, is what open primaries does. And it also makes it so voters are not forced into this binary choice of Republican or Democrat when a lot of places aren't competitive anyway. So maybe it's a super, super red district and you have 3 or 4 Republicans on the ballot in the general, or you have 3 and 1 or something. It's about giving voters a lot more choice. And so of course, when you give when you give more choice, it is great to have ranked choice voting in place so you don't get the plurality wins. In Illinois, I don't see open primaries happening. Unfortunately, and I should say, so Alaska's using that Nevada is going to be voting on that system with ranked choice voting this November. So is Idaho, I believe. And yeah, Nevada and Idaho. I don't think Colorado is. Oregon is not either, but at least 2 are voting on that. I don't see it happening for Illinois because legislatures don't want to vote to have more candidates against them in the general. They just don't. So the places where you're seeing this again, it's where voters can vote on it. So we think ranked choice voting is actually feasible at some point. So that's what we're going for.
How expensive is it to have this transition from regular elections like we have now to ranked choice voting? Would we need new voting machines, or what would we have to do?
We are actually, it's a great question. We're in a really good place with our voting machines in Illinois. So what we found is that, so Cook County, including Chicago, they're part of Cook County, but they both do their own elections, right? They use Dominion voting machines. They need to actually purchase a RCV software upgrade to make that work. We don't know exactly how much that costs because Dominion won't talk to us. They're like, you're not an election jurisdiction. But from everything we've found from looking at other places and everything, it's probably somewhere between like 40 and 70,000. So it's a pretty small cost to get it for using for the whole city of Chicago or all of Cook County. Now, everywhere else throughout the state, they're either in positions with their machines where their machines are ranked choice voting ready, like they happen to be newer ones where it already has that capability, or if they don't, they have machines where they're able to use open source software, such as RCTab, which is what they use in New York City. So it's very good. It works very well for large elections and everything. But that's the state of our machines in Illinois.
I was just wondering, which states don't do, that they've outlawed our RCV ranked choice voting?
I was gonna say, I can't remember all of them right
So
now.
it's Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Oklahoma signed ranked choice voting bans into law in April and May. Yep. So
Yeah.
Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, also, sorry, Vicki, I should have also said to your question, so yeah, I addressed the state of our machines, won't really cost much there. There are, of course, some, upfront costs if a city or the whole state switches to ranked choice voting. You want to make sure you do a good candidate education campaign. And, groups like ours, FairVote Illinois, will help a lot with that, with places like Evanston, future places. But it's certainly helpful if the individual city or the state contributes funding to that. In Alaska and Maine, that was heavily funded by the state. But the good thing is you really only have to do a big push the first time around, and then voters get it pretty well.
I think we have time for one more question before we check on how we rated our pizzas.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a question? All right, perfect. I'm gonna duck under that camera.
Building on your education topic, are any of our state universities or colleges using this for their student government elections?
A bunch, yeah. I know that Northwestern uses it, but yeah, a bunch. I can tell you all of them because I think there's a list somewhere. I think I've seen it before, and that's how I know there's a bunch of them. But I know the one closest to home is Northwestern. We also use ranked choice voting for the Oscars. Fun fact, because there are 10 candidates for a lot, right? And then I think for the actors, there's usually 5 or 6, right? But yeah, we've used ranked choice voting for the Oscars for quite some time, and it works well. So yeah. All right, and he said, let's check out who won now. Okay, so I am a little nervous with this. election that one is just going to win outright, and then you won't get to see the cool rounds. But we're gonna see. We're gonna see. I'm so not used to this keyboard. Oh, okay. No one won outright. Okay, so pepperoni is firmly in the lead. All right, pepperoni won. I figured pepperoni was gonna win. But it did not win outright at first. So then it was cheese, and then see, my favorite was sausage, and so but pepperoni was my second favorite. So yeah.
It said you could check as you were voting,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
but sausage was winning.
It was winning. Okay, so some people.
It said on mine, winner sausage. Well, as more votes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. As more votes came in, yeah. Yeah. But yes, so that's a little fun example of how that works. We didn't have a ton of, candidates today, so it wasn't a bunch of rounds, but yeah.
essentially after the first round, right, because pepperoni didn't have half, everybody who voted for sausage and veggie as their number one wins to pepperoni, or their second vote, which happened to be pepperoni, wins
Yep.
in the second round.
Yeah. I think one vote went to cheese. No votes went to cheese. Everyone was like, I need a topping. We had 3 cheese lovers, but everyone else was like, give me a topping. Yeah. All right, but that was fun. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Did you have?
If all of the sausage had gone to cheese,
Mm-hmm.
then because you're wiping out 2 at a time,
Yep.
whoever won, however large,
Yeah, it's still.
that would have been the winner.
Pepperoni still would have won because I can see here it's pretty small. I don't know if you guys can read it, but it looks like the threshold for this was 8 votes to win. So pepperoni kind of mathematically was going to win no matter what. But yeah. Or I guess it could have been a tie. However, with ranked choice voting, the way you break a tie on the rare occasion that you would have the tie is the win goes to whoever was initially ahead. So that's nice that you have that way to break it. Yeah. All right.
All right, let's give one more round of applause to our speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for your time and talents and expertise. Just a quick blurb before we all log off for the day. This was just one of our civic series of engagement here between the League of Women Voters of the Palatine area, as well as with the Schaumburg Library. I will slideshow this so you can see a little bit. If you enjoyed this, we have our next event on August 13th. That's a Tuesday. These are always the second Tuesday of the month. Our next one being on the role of the National Convention in shaping voters' behavior. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can sign up either through the League of Women Voters Palatine or at the SchaumburgLibrary.org adult events category. So on either website, please do reach out if anything today was interesting to you. We've been doing the Civic series all year and we'll continue throughout